Okay, so this is the last part that we will cover with the reading JSON data from in a different formats. In the previous video, what we talked about how we read a complex object like this, where you have multiple attributes, you have an array, and then you have an embedded object in it. In this example, the last example is that how do you read an object with multiple multiple objects in it. So I'm going to create another file new, and it's going to be that blank file again, empty, and then we will create this. We'll call it list of employees. Okay, list of employees. Okay, like that, list of employees. I'm going to copy it so we'll use it later on. Okay, and what is the type here? It's JSON, just like we did the previous one. And then we create. Now, instead of copying it, do it all over again, I'm going to copy this, the one that we did in the previous example, the previous video, and then modify the list in this new one. Okay. So that is the object that we have. Now, I want to make this is an array, an object. So I add, do you see this? I added the bracket at the beginning and a bracket at the end, right? So now I have everything inside of this belong to that object. Okay. To make this as an array, we're going to give it first an attribute. So we're going to say employees, like that. Employees. And this is an attribute. And the value of this employee right now, this attribute, is the value of this attribute is this value here. Whatever is between these two brackets, like that. All right? But that's one object. So it says, this is an employee, this is an attribute. We have one object on top, and then this object, let's just write it all down so you can see it. Okay? This object has an attribute called employees, and this attribute right now has only one value, only one object inside of it, until here. So how do I make this a list of objects? First, we need to make it an array. How do we make it an array? We put the square bracket before and square bracket at the end. So now, my data says that employees is actually an array. This array right now, it contains only one object. All right, only one object. I'm just trying to format it so you can see the difference. You can see it organized in a better way. All right. Okay. Doesn't look good, but give me a minute. We'll make it look better. Okay. All right. So this is the end of this internal object, and this is the object inside that array. Did we delete the array in square? Yeah, we deleted this. Okay, so this is an attribute. We have an object with this attribute, only employee. Inside that employee is an array that contains right now only one object, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another object inside that array. So put a comma. I'm going to copy this, command copy, and then put command V. Like that. So now this array, how many objects does it have in it? 2. This is the first one, and this is the second one. All right. Any questions, Sabine? You okay with this? Yeah. So that's what your JSON data looks like. So you can see now it's a little bit more complex. You have an employee attribute, a list that came to you, and it has a name called employee attributes. Inside that array, inside that attribute, the value for this attribute is an array of multiple objects. Each object consists of these following attributes. We have an array and we have an internal object. Now, in the previous video, we created the structure to do what? To read this, right? So what about to read an array, right? How do we create an array of objects, a structure that contains an array of objects? So if we look at the, if you look at the view controller, here's my view controller. Notice this was the, says employee with object. This was the structure, right? We created a structure for the department first, and then we created the structure for the employee with object, and then we added the department part of it, right? So how about if we want a structure that contains a list of employees with object? We already have the structure. It's called employees with object. So all we do this. We define another structure, struct, and we're going to call that employees, like that. Again, it's decodable. What's inside that structure? It's a value called employees. Where does this come from? Where does this value come from? The name of the value. Tazakkaru, do you remember here? What is it that we have here? We have employees, right? So it's called employees. Like that. What is the type of employees? It is an array. Array of what? Objects, right? Which object that we've just created? This one, right? So this is an array of this type of object, employee with object. And that's it. We forgot the var, right? All right, let me just pause it and explain to you what we've done, okay? Okay, so what we've done is that we've created the structure, and notice what does the structure contains? It contains the employee object, which is this, which is in turn an object that also has an internal object, which is the department. Okay, so it's a little bit of a complex, these are called nested objects. Now we have the example already to read that one, the last example, which is what? We have it called example 3, right? I'm gonna copy this guy. I'm gonna call it example 4. Example 4. Okay. Did we have example 1, example 2? Where's example 3? Did we just, I think I just messed it up. So this is example 3. I'm going to copy example 3, but where did we paste it? Maybe not. Command copy and then command V. And this is example 4. All right. Okay. Now, in this example 4, we're reading a new file. What is the file that we're reading? List of employees, and it is case sensitive. I don't know if some of you have a problem, so I'm going to copy it from here. We go to the view controller and we change this to the name of the new file that we just created. List of employees. The steps are the same. We read the file, create a decoder, decode it using the JSON structure now, JSON data. Which structure should we use here? The one we just created. Which one is it? Employees. So this is the structure that we will use. Okay, employees. So in here, again, you can, in here, you will put, instead of this, employees. Employees.self. Okay. But the result that we're getting, this will give me an error. Okay, I'm gonna put those. We will delete these in a minute. I'm gonna comment these and explain to you what we have here. All of this will be an error. Okay. What is the result now? What is the result? It's an array, right? Inside of it, there is an array. There's an attribute. What is the attribute? The attribute called employees, and that employees is what? Is an array of that object. You got it? So I have a list. I have an attribute called employee, one attribute, but that attribute is a list of employee objects. So, which is what? Inside the JSON data, I have everything inside that attribute. All right? So if I go back to the view controller and my result, if I say, look, if I do this for every, do you see that function here? So if I say for every T in what? Result dot what? Employees. So this allow me to traverse through the array of employees. What do we want to do? We want to print out, get the object, and do something with it. What is E? E is this complex object, which is what? This thing called employee object with object, right? So in here, I can say print E dot, do you see that? I have a department, I have age, and I have name. So if I say type in name, that will print out the name. If I do print age, E.age, that will print out the age. But this is string, it's an integer, so what do we need to do? We need to print it, cast it to a string, okay? Like that. All right? So if I wanted to print the experience, notice this is to print the experience. I already have the code to do that. I'm going to delete this. I can get the experience from here, but I cannot do, because it's an array, I cannot do Command X. I can put it inside the main loop, because the main loop has an array of objects. Anyway, I don't want you to confuse you, but you can put it inside this loop and it would work. Okay, for the experience. I'm going to just show you. I will put experience, and here I will print experience EX instead of EE. Okay, not result. Here I will put E dot experience. So this will print me the name, this will print me the experience, and if I want the department information, I will have to do the same thing. All right. Now, if we run it, barring any problems, we should get out the result. Still waiting. Wow, that's slow. All right, it's waiting. Let me pause it here for a minute while this is running. All right, one more thing. One of my good students figured it out. We need to change this the function to call, which is what? 4. So we need to call example 4 to test it. Okay. Now run it again. And then we wait again. All right. Okay. Now we should have gotten results. Maybe not yet. We didn't get anything. All right. Don't know why, but we'll figure it out. All right. Maybe no. Here it is. Just taking too long. Notice it came from. This is the name. That was the name for that first employee. This is the second. This is the age. This is the experience. Now we should have gotten two. I mean, in this case, we only read. We have Ali, but we should have had 2 data. Yeah. So that's why you got 2 data, 2 records. If you've changed the second, if you change this to somebody else, then run it, you will get two different values listed. Okay, that is I think everything that you need to know about reading JSON data. The example that we've done is that to read it from a file, but this applies to the same thing, reading it from a server or from a feed or anything like that, from a web service, anything like that. All right. This is the end of that last video, and hope you are benefiting from it.